Hi friends, well I thought that I would go ahead and share this video. Full disclaimer, I am a hobbyist sewist. My mom taught me when I was a really young girl, and I went, off and on sewing, but hadn't sewn for a couple of decades, and then took it back up about, gosh, I want to say 5 years ago. And so I am not a professional. I'm a hobbyist sewist. I don't have any formal education on, drafting or anything like that. So I am in no way intending for this to be some sort of, technical tool for anybody else. I'm just sharing what works for me and how I do my own personal full bust adjustment using my projector and patterns. So I tried to share the Valerie dress. The Valerie dress is the one that I shared that had the really cool sunset panel, and I broke up the dress into different pieces. Unfortunately, when I laid that pattern out, because it's broken up into sections, I would have had to have shared a lot more of the pattern than I felt comfortable doing. I wanted to protect the pattern. So I'm using a shirt pattern that I like, that is very similar in the fact that I can kind of use these lines as guidance, kind of tell you how I did the projector adjustments for that dress. So this is a pattern that has a line right here that I'm just going to say for all intents and purposes would be the upper bodice part of the Valerie dress. And if you don't remember what the Valerie dress looks like, here's a photo of the dress. As you can see, there's this upper section, there's this whole midsection that has these different angles that are cut, specifically pieced together for the midsection, and then you have this lower section that attaches to the very bottom of the dress. So what I did for the Valerie dress, and I've made myself that dress a couple of times, and I've done a full bust adjustment every time that I've made it. The easiest way for me to do it on that dress is to, because it's in so many different pieces, is to simply just give myself a little bit of extra room right through here where I need the full bust adjustment. So what I'll do is, let's just use this as an example. We're just going to pretend like this is the Valerie dress file that I'm projecting. And let's just say this is the top bodice piece. This is going to be separate. These are all different pieces. I would take my full bust adjustment, whether that's this paper one or one that I'm projecting, and I would draw a line where my pattern would have been cut and where my full bust adjustment is. And I basically give myself this little bit of extra room up here that allows for me, let me move this a little bit so you can see, that allows for me to give myself that added room in the bust area. Then I move on to the other pieces and I do the same thing. I lay my pattern, my full bust adjustment down, or the projector file that has my full bust adjustment, I lay that down, and then I do the same thing. I give myself this little bit of extra room on the sides. Once I take all the pieces, I believe there's 6 or 7, I put them together, I sew them up, and then I do my top stitching. I come back to the piece, which is now going to be in a taller section. I come back and I take my full bust adjustment and just recut and make sure that I'm catching my full bust adjustment on that pattern piece. Then I start attaching the other pieces. So that's how I do that on the Valerie dress. So just for demonstration, I'm going to show you how I did that on this tank top, or shirt I should say, that I made. I made 2 of them. I made one, I believe, in what was it, elbow length sleeve, I think, and one in short sleeve. And I had to do the same thing. I had to do a full bust adjustment. So here's how I would do that. I would take a piece of paper, masking tape, and I would make a mark on my cutting table exactly where that arm side, this would end on my cutting mat, because I want to make sure that when I go to the projector file that I'm going to project down onto this pattern, that is also matching up. So that's the first thing that I do, is I find whatever that visual is for me to match up my patterns and make sure that I'm matching those up one on top of the other. All I'm trying to do is match up this section right here. The patterns are going to be different. The waists are going to be graded in differently because they're two totally different patterns. So this pattern piece right here, again, this is something that I created for myself. You can do this simply by going online. There's a lot of tutorials on how to create your own personal full bust adjustment. This one works for me. Once I did that and I used the technique where you split the paper and then you retape it and you put it back together. I did that and then I traced this out and I used this a lot. So this is pretty easy. I could just simply go to a pattern and use this. Here's my projector, my pattern being projected. I simply lay my full bust adjustment over this and then I can make my adjustment. So what I did here on this piece here is I went ahead and I drew a line. I did it in yellow first, but you wouldn't have been able to see it. And then I did just a quick line in blue so you could see what I'm talking about. So now this is the pattern that I'm going to eventually cut. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to another file, a projector file, one that I know 100% works for me. Now I happen to really luck out because there is a pattern out there that works really well for me for a dress. So I have a projector file that has a really good full bust adjustment for me personally. So if you don't have that, then you'll have to do the other method where basically you are using tracing paper or something like that. Or if you are talented in a way that I am not, where you could go in and draft one yourself, you could do that as well. I'm not very gifted in the drafting area. I guess if I were to spend a lot more time doing that, I could potentially do it, but I don't find it fun. I don't really enjoy it, whereas other people do and they have a blast doing it, and it comes to them very, very easily, whereas with me, I can spend a whole day just trying to do one pattern. It's not worth it for me to do it. So again, here's where I'm going to be making my adjustment. So now I'm going to go and grab my other projector file. Now keep in mind that these two patterns are different, so they're going to look a little bit different when it comes to where exactly I'm cutting for the waist, etc. But here's my tape right here, and I have this matched up, and I know that this notch is matched up because I can see on the pattern, you probably can't see it very well on video, but there's a little tiny notch here, so it's kind of easy for me to see where the pattern designer added that full bust adjustment. So now here's my full bust adjustment pattern projected down onto the original fabric. Here's what, oh, that is pretty perfect, isn't it? Because here's the cut right here. This is really, really close to the pattern. To my own personal full bust adjustment. So what I would do is I would go ahead and I would cut my full bust adjustment. Now you might have to do a little bit of grading here because again, this is a dress pattern that I'm now projecting down onto this. Originally, this line was for a top. So then I would simply come in here and make my adjustment for my full bust. That's how I do it. If there are other techniques or methods that people utilize to do that, that would be great. But I just wanted to quickly show you that that's how I do mine. Not everybody needs a full bust adjustment. There's different measurements that you can take. Some patterns require that you do a full bust adjustment for a fit if they give you certain measurements and you're within those parameters or outside of those parameters. For me, I know that pretty much anytime I'm going to use any sort of stretchy knit or anything that is form-fitting like this, I really, really need to have a full bust adjustment. The Valerie dress in particular is very form-fitting on me, so I definitely like giving myself that little bit of extra room in the bust. I hope that that helps. Again, if you have any questions, let me know. I just wanted to quickly do a video so that I could share with you this is how I project it onto my pattern, on the original pattern, or you can simply just, create a full bust adjustment for yourself.